Games with Jeff. You know folks, I feel like playing an archer in video games is really one of those kind of ubiquitous roles. Like, it's really important to the feeling and the vibe of so many different games. Whenever I'd play Skyrim or Oblivion, my first character would always be a stealthy archer who could do a billion damage with sneak attacks. In World of Warcraft, the Marksmanship Hunter has always been about the bow and the gun, with the pet being a bit secondary. I really liked that in Legion, Marksman Hunters were given the option, or perhaps it's more honest to say that they were forced, to play without a pet. Now we finally had a spec that was really all about being an archer. But I've got to admit that I was never a fan of Hunter in Legion. The whole vulnerability mechanic just made me feel like I was playing ranged rep pally, just trying to spam as many aim shots within the window as I could. I guess I just felt like Mark's playstyle should have been more based around cool and unique abilities like Chimera Shot or Rapid Shot, and less built around a window mechanic. To be fair, I'm just not really a fan of DPS window mechanics in general. So when I heard that Hunter was going to be reworked and that the vulnerability window was going away, I was super excited. Finally, I'd be able to enjoy playing Marks again and feel like an epic archer. But how has Beta treated marksmanship? Does it work? Or, like many DPS shamans and Shadow Priest mains have been saying, is it a spec that feels sluggish and unfinished after the rework? Well, let's take a look. is a very different spec than it was in Legion. In fact, while in these videos I usually talk a little bit about what was lost or what changed, in this case so much was changed that Hunter in BFA is not at all like it was in Legion. Marked Shot was removed, vulnerability is gone, and obviously the artifact ability Windburst is no more. With all of these abilities gone, in their place we've received, well, not really very much. Rapid Fire, which is a channeled ability that fires a bunch of arrows at a single target, and Steady Shot, which is a castable while moving ability that refunds some of our incredibly slow to refill focus. Arcane Shot now costs focus, so Steady Shot is the only way to increase focus regeneration. The basic rotation goes something like this. You start with Aimed Shot, which gives you a proc for Arcane Shot. Then you Rapid Fire to get it on cooldown. Then you use your Arcane Shot proc, because you don't want to waste it, and then you Aimed Shot again. If you get procs on Arcane Shot, you use them. If you run out of focus, you spam cast Steady Shot a few times. Make sure you use Rapid Fire as soon as it's off cooldown. Don't waste those Arcane Shot procs. Don't cap focus. So if you're like me, you probably are noticing one thing about the rotation. It's really straightforward and honestly pretty boring. A lot of the difficulty in the spec right now is based on not capping focus and making sure you use Rapid Fire on cooldown and Aimed Shot before you cap it out at 2 charges, which is oddly reminiscent of Survival, where you want to use Wildfire Bomb on cooldown and Kill Command before you likewise cap 2 charges. So it's actually a bit odd that the two specs feature some very similar gameplay loops. One thing I was hoping to see with the Marksmanship rework was a bit more variety in the types of shots. Steady Shot and Aimed Shot don't really feel different, except that one gives you focus and the other does more damage. It'd be nice if we could have, oh I don't know, a fire shot or an exploding shot that wasn't so weird and difficult to aim. Something else in the baseline rotation that provided a bit more positive feedback when you used it. With Survival, that moment comes from throwing nifty little wildfire bombs and chakrams at enemies. I guess the closest Marksman has to that is Rapid Fire, which is pretty cool, I'll admit. I wanted the spec to be a little bit more exciting and to feel a bit more flashy and rewarding when you're playing it right. Hopefully the talents can spice things up a bit and make the simple basic rotation a bit more interesting. As you might expect from a reworked spec, many of the talents are different from their Legion counterparts. At the 15 tier we have Master Marksman, Serpent Sting, which is a baseline survival ability, and the old classic Murder of Crows. Master Marksman adds a nice proc that synergizes nicely with the existing Aimed Shot proc that increases Arcane Shot damage, while Serpent Sting gives the spec a 12-second dot that should be kept up on the target as much as possible. Murder of Crows is the same boring talent it's always been. Anecdotally, I think it's a bit interesting to have Serpent Sting on here. The spec already feels a bit like Survival. With the added dot taken, the similarities are even stronger. At the 30 tier we have Careful Aim, Volley, and Explosive Shot. Careful Aim is interesting, essentially an execute that also engages during the beginning of a boss fight. This could be especially good on any fights with a difficult first and last phase. Also, it's easy. Take the talent and get DPS, no thought needed. Volley is similar in that it does extra damage without any existing action needing to be taken. Explosive Shot is the same difficult to use ability it was in Legion. I'm worried that this tier is going to end up being one of those rows where it's just like, take Careful Aim for single target and Volley for ad fights and no thinking at all is required. These rows usually end up being boring and they just necessitate using a billion tomes between raid bosses. The 45 tier has utility stuff. Trailblazer increases movement speed if you don't attack, so not especially helpful in most content. Natural Mending makes it so you can use Exhilaration more, so that's great. And Camouflage lets you stealth every minute, which will be nice for world content and PvP. The 60 tier has Steady Focus, Streamline, and Hunter's Mark. Steady Focus makes Steady Shot faster when you spam it, which promotes a kind of boring playstyle in my opinion. It will likely be the best on this tier though. Streamline makes Rapid Fire last a bit longer, and Hunter's Mark increases the damage you do to a marked target and lets the hunter always see them. This last one will be nice for world content and PvP. To be honest, I'd rather that Steady Focus instead decrease the cast time of Steady Shot when it's not cast in succession. That would make the rotation require the player to weave it in rather than just using your focus and then spamming it 3 or 4 or 5 times. That's just me though. The 75 tier has utility stuff. Born to be Wild decreases the cooldown of Aspect of the Cheetah and Aspect of the Turtle, and it'll be the default choice. Post Haste makes Disengage remove movement impairing effects and increase move speed for 4 seconds, and Binding Shot roots enemies who move away from it. The 90 tier has Lethal Shots, Barrage, and Doubletap. Lethal Shots makes Steady Shot have a 25% chance to make Aim Shot or Rapid Fire a guaranteed critical shot. This might be awkward to use with the Steady Focus talent from before, which promotes spamming Steady Shot. Barrage is good for pulling every single mob in the dungeon, and will likely be the go-to choice for larger trash pull mythic dungeons. Now Doubletap is a little bit interesting. Every 1 minute, the player can fire 2 aimed shots or rapid fires at the same time for the cost of 1. This could end up being pretty strong in PvP or for fights like Avatar in Tomb of Sargeras, where you had to burst down the Maiden's Shield. The 100 tier at last has Calling the Shots, Lock and Load, and Piercing Shot. Calling the Shots is a boring passive that lets you use True Shot more often, and has a good chance of being the best on this tier. Lock and Load gives the player a small chance to get an instant aim shot, which is always nice. And Piercing Shot is the same weird talent that it was back in Legion. I doubt it'll be very good unless it's tuned a lot higher than it was last expansion pack. All in all, I don't feel like the talents are especially interesting. I worry that many of them will have a single talent that's obviously superior, and will result in the player not really having much choice. Although, to be fair, this happened most of the time with most specs in Legion, so it's not like it's a new problem. Overall, I feel like Marksmanship Hunter is less annoying to play than it was in Legion, but also a bit less exciting. I wish the developers had been able to make the spec feel just a bit more rewarding. Right now, the player just cycles between Aimed Shot and Arcane Shot, uses Rapid Fire on cooldown, and spams Steady Shot once you're out of focus. I'd really suggest that the team remove the Steady Focus talent, which promotes Steady Shot spamming, and instead make Steady Shot have a shorter cast time, or maybe return extra focus, if the previous ability was not Steady Shot. This would help a bit to make the rotation somewhat more engaging, since the player would need to weave Steady Shot into the rotation, rather than just mindlessly spamming it. But what do you all think about the new Hunter? Let me know in the comments. I now also have Facebook and Twitter, so be sure to check those pages out as I'll be posting little things that don't deserve a full video, but are still interesting. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Best wishes, fellow hunter friends, and I'll see you soon.